Remodeling. Stress-free and high-quality remodeling. View their stunning transformations online at the number 4 everremodeling.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. Yesterday's press conference in Minneapolis, we heard from acting U.S. Attorney in Minneapolis, Joe Thompson, about the shooter. Here's his description of what they believe based on the evidence that has been recovered.
We are investigating the motive, why and how this happened. The shooter left behind hundreds of pages of writings that describe the shooter's plan, writings that describe the shooter's mental state, and more than anything, writings that describe the shooter's hate, pure, indiscriminate hate. The shooter expressed hate towards almost every group imaginable. The shooter expressed hate towards black people. The shooter expressed hate towards Mexican people. The shooter expressed hate towards Christian people. The shooter expressed hate towards Jewish people. In short, the shooter appeared to hate all of us. The shooter's heart was full of hate. There appears to be only one group that the shooter didn't hate, one group of people who the shooter admired. The group were the school shooters and mass murderers that are notorious in this country.
Okay. That's all true, but all of this sort of love overcomes hate business only takes me so far. I want more information, and I know his mom has lawyered up and is not cooperating with authorities, as we discussed earlier. So that's delaying perhaps getting some additional contextual information. But other people are talking. And one former friend of the shooters denounced him as demonic, saying that he used to horrify classmates by walking around saying, "Praise Hitler," quote unquote. Josephina Sanchez said she is still tormented by how erratic and off the shooter was when they were briefly friends in 7th grade at a school in St. Paul. Briefly friends in 7th grade at a school in St. Paul. So we know that he changed schools in high school. He went from a charter school to an all-boys private school. But see, he also changed schools in grade school because he spent at least some of his grade school years at Annunciation, I thought. These are the sorts of things that, you want to understand in terms of why is he moving around from school to school? And also, if Josephina Sanchez and others were tormented by how erratic and off he was when they were friends in 7th grade, when he was, 13 years old? So if there were issues a decade ago, and then he transitions half a decade ago, 6 years, and he's going from school to school, you really sort of now want to know what mom and dad knew or should have known. In addition, as we mentioned at the opening today, we have 2 police calls to the home in Eagan, Minnesota. In a heavily redacted police report NBC News obtained from the police department there, January 26, 2018, 2-word description explaining why an officer was dispatched to the address. The 2 words? Mental health. It includes a brief synopsis that reads, quote, assisted Mendota Heights with a check welfare of a juvenile, unquote. The name, what happened, all redacted. 2 years before the mental health call, police responded to a report of a quote unquote criminal offense at the residence, but everything else is redacted in the police report and the case was closed. So mom and dad are going to be compelled to talk at some point, to answer questions at some point. But gosh, it would be interesting to hear about their son, the shooter, going back at least a decade now, based on what we're hearing from grade school friends, in terms of what they knew or should have known. Was counseling something that was provided to him at some point or on an ongoing basis, starting at some point? Oh, and as we talked about per RFK Jr.'s comments yesterday, what about drugs, psychiatric drugs, drugs associated with his transition, to the extent that he was transitioning physically and not just nominally? For more on this and other topics, including the topic we were just discussing, the suit against OpenAI over a teenager suicide, pleased to be joined by Jonathan Alpert again. He's a psychotherapist practicing in New York and Washington, D.C., and author of the forthcoming book, Therapy Nation, which will be out next year. Jonathan Alpert, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
Good. What questions, in addition to those I have, do you have?
Well, I think we all have a lot of questions, and the psychological autopsy that will be hopefully conducted on this killer hopefully will reveal a lot about him. I think there's a lot to understand, and someone doesn't just wake up one day and decide to kill people. These things don't occur in a vacuum. So it will be interesting to see what comes out, and we're already starting to see bits and pieces of information. The piece about the police calls, I think that just came out late yesterday. Right. So we'll find out more and start to piece it together. And the goal, of course, is to learn more about what motivates and makes these killers kill, and the goal being to prevent it from happening.
What's your view on psychiatric drugs, some of these prescription drugs, and RFK Jr., you probably heard yesterday, talking about basically saying, look, I'm old enough to remember when we had gun clubs in schools. Guns have been a part of the American fabric since its founding. The difference is what's happening in terms of some of these people that I wouldn't say indiscriminately shoot, because he had a target, and he had a target for a reason, but are so callous, demonic, whatever description you want, that they open fire to try to kill as many people as they can for sometimes inscrutable reasons. That we need to look back and build a profile on the drugs that they were on, and maybe including psychiatric drugs, but not limited to. I mean, that's a part of it, that we're over medicated and sometimes mismedicated, and particularly children, when it comes to these diagnoses for ADHD or depression or anxiety. What do you say to the whole psychiatric drug issue?
Yeah, and I'm not a prescriber, so I speak as a therapist, and I will say that from what I see, there is certainly an over-reliance on medications. People are taking meds for the equivalent of a psychological sniffle. If you're feeling blue because it's cold in Chicago or somewhere else, that doesn't mean you go and run to the doctor and get on SSRIs. I had a case a long time ago where someone had a pimple, and she called me in distress over this pimple, and the next call she was going to make was to her medical doctor to get a prescription for antidepressants, and of course I talked her out of that. But we have a tendency to reach for the pill, to over-medicate, and it's not helping us to face reality. It's numbing us up. Medication will not provide us with insight. It will not give us tools to deal with stress or handle difficult situations. therapists and medical professionals are largely to blame for this. It's easy to write a script and medicate someone and numb that person up. And consumers, the patients, are really quick to ask for it. And there are a lot of reasons for this. We have social media that's promoting quick fixes. We have people on social media that are whining and complaining about their mental health, and people are just buying into this and identifying with their favorite influencer and saying, well, geez, I think I have ADHD, or I think I'm depressed too. So we have a huge problem in our society, and it needs to be addressed.
Or I think I'm trans too. The social,
well, that's a
the
whole
social contagion.
Story.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and that's a whole nother topic that we can certainly address at some point. But yeah, and not every trans person turns out to be a killer, of course,
right.
And that distinction needs to be made.
Well, of course, not every person of any category. It's more like a question of predisposition or marginalization, where you're getting to a point where it's clear that you have problems in addition to gender dysphoria, I would argue. Apparently, his classmates in grade school noticed, but nobody else did. I mean, it was sort of fascinating to listen to the police chief from Minneapolis yesterday say there were no red flags. There was no indications that there was a mental health problem. As this is coming into focus, there looks like about 10 years worth of evidence there's a mental health issue.
Well, of course, and in retrospect, we can always find mental health issues. And, like I said earlier, we need to learn from this.
You know, part of it, you wrote a piece for Fox, you talking about the grievance culture. And, clearly somebody who expresses the things the Minneapolis shooter does had a lot of grievances, felt wronged by the world, society. This is where you start to hate people by groups because you're just sort of a victim of the culture as it is, and these groups that don't accept you or something like that, and so you lash out on a group basis. So that's certainly part of it, and you sort of used the Mangione case as the basis to distill this grievance culture and how dangerous it is.
Right, and apparently the only group that this killer didn't feel wronged by are other killers, other school shooters.
Right.
But yeah, with the Mangione case, when we have people celebrating this killer, Mangione, and elevating to the status of folk hero, that does speak to so many things that are wrong with our society. Therapists, again, are largely responsible for this. They're validating everything the patient says. Of course, it's not you, it's your boss, or it's your colleague, or it's your spouse. They're the problem, not you. So therapists need to start getting it together and not just validating the patient and making them feel good. They need to really change the way they approach therapy.
Well, that's
they're the ones instilling this victim mindset largely, and then people go out into the world and they blame everyone else, and we see in extreme cases they can commit heinous crimes.
Yeah, I mean, they're almost like some of these therapists, a lot of these therapists, because it's dominated by people of a leftist disposition politically, are like these chatbots. They just reinforce whatever it is you're coming to them to offer, and rather than saying, actually, no, you have this wrong. You're thinking about this the wrong way. That's sort of the judgment you would expect from a counselor, but it's not what you get. You get the reinforcement. You get people saying, we've heard it just in the last 24 hours from politicians and alleged therapists alike, that, we have to listen to the children and then essentially follow the children, which is the whole attitude on transing kids and so on and other such instances as well, which is, whatever the kids say, you got to do. You got to be affirming. That's the word of our culture.
Well, that's the word of the far left culture, and that's a huge problem that I'm seeing, particularly with trans. We shouldn't jump to just validating everything a young kid feels or says. We need to challenge the person and really explore why they might feel a certain way. And therapists are very quick to just validate and run with it. And that's part of the problem that we're seeing. We didn't just suddenly, the population became trans, the big part of the population that we're seeing now. There's a reason for it. So we need to take a step back, hit the pause button, and really evaluate what's happening here.
We were talking before you joined us about the case out of California. Another terrible case, unfortunately. Parents of a 16-year-old who committed suicide. They're suing OpenAI because they argued that ChatGPT contributed to their son's suicide by essentially, at a certain point during their interactions, validating his desire to commit suicide and telling him not to talk to his mom when he suggested he was thinking about talking to his mom about his anxiety, and then providing a step-by-step instructional of how to hang yourself. I wonder if you've had any interaction with kids or adults with suicidal ideation and the AI piece of it in terms of how concerning this technology is to you with respect to that.
Yeah, it's a terrible, terrible case. I believe his name was Adam. It's a terrible case. And AI chatbots didn't just occur out of nowhere. They are, I would say, the product or the result of bad therapy. People want answers, and chatbots give them. They'll tell you what to do. If you need help dealing with a difficult person or colleague, it will tell you what to do. It's not always right, and it's not always helpful, but it will give you very direct answers. And I think that's part of what we see with this case. ChatGPT doesn't have the brains to understand nuance, and it doesn't know how to handle someone who's in trouble. So we'll see what happens with this case as well, with the lawsuit. But I have worked certainly with patients who have been suicidal, and you don't just validate their feelings. You have to really push back and make sure they're safe.
Jonathan Alpert.
And that's not something ChatGPT is capable of doing.
Mm-hmm. Clearly. Jonathan Alpert, psychotherapist practicing in New York and Washington, author of the forthcoming book, Therapy Nation, due out next year. Jonathan, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
You too. And Jonathan Alpert joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year.